I'm Liz Von Venture. I'm the planning director here for the town of Burlington. And I just want to thank you guys all for joining us tonight. So I guess to start off, our department has known about this since 2020, and we've been working on it since it first came out, this law. And for tonight, I think the objectives that we see as being the purpose of tonight is to kind of like learn about the facts of the MBTA Communities Law, learn about our plan for what we're proposing to have done, and then we want to hear from you. So after our presentation, we want to break out into discussion groups, and we have some questions for you guys so we can hear from you, because it's important to get feedback from the community. So I also want to start out kind of just by kind of leveling the playing field. There's been a lot of talk in the news around the state regarding Milton and the town of Milton. So I kind of wanted to just discuss that for a few seconds just to set a level field. We are not Milton. Comparing the town of Burlington to Milton is like comparing apples and oranges. They have a completely different set of requirements than we do. They have access to rapid transit that we do not, and they've benefited from that. And so, when looking at our plan and thinking about what's going on with Milton, it's really difficult to compare the two. They're two different things. The other thing I would like to do is I would like to introduce some of the people that are here tonight. We have members of the planning board. We have Jess Sutherland and Bill Gaffney. Thank you guys for coming out. We have Melissa Tentopoulos, our economic development director, and then we have Paul Sagarino, who's here. He's going to say a few words about the MBTA communities. So I'm going to give it to him.
Thank you, Liz, for giving me the opportunity to address the group tonight. Unfortunately, I appreciate you putting me up front. I do have to run to a ZBRC meeting at 6:30, so I appreciate the opportunity to speak. MBTA Communities Law, I'm sure everybody has sort of seen this play out on television and on the news recently. It's been really kind of a divisive issue across the state. I think from what we witnessed at our planning board hearing the other night, many of those opinions that we see across the state are actually here in Burlington as well. It's been a very difficult thing for us to manage, but thank you to the efforts of Liz, Caleb, Melissa, and the planning staff. I think they've done a really good job of what they're going to present to you tonight in sort of splitting the difference for the town. I think that this law, all of us would tell you that it's a little bit flawed. It's very well intentioned, but it is flawed as it came to us. A lot of things wrong with it. It doesn't really account for affordable housing and things of that nature. But again, they worked extremely hard on it, and kudos to Liz. I really think that they split the difference and came up with a really good plan for the town to consider. Now, critics of the plan that don't want the state involved in our housing, I do think that the plan put forward will protect us from unwanted housing. We do intend to take credit. The town has done a good job of creating housing over the years, and we want to take credit for that for some of the overlay district. There's also a new area of the district, a commercial area that we think would be well suited for some housing as well. But critics would say that this plan actually doesn't generate much housing, and they may be right on that. It is the ability to check the regulatory box to continue to receive state funding through grants, also not open ourselves up to unwanted housing areas. And I want everyone to sort of remember that that's sort of like phase one of our plan. Phase two, which will be coming to town meeting in September, is the 128 Mall Road redevelopment area. That is an area that we do think that the town does need housing to support the existing commercial businesses in that area. So as we bring that forward to you, we do hope to generate real housing units down there that we know are needed within the Commonwealth. We hear from our businesses all the time that they want to locate in areas that have housing options for their employees. We already have a great set of amenities in that area in terms of restaurants and retail. So I would consider that to be phase two, and that's an area where we do think that we would like to see town meeting support some housing in the future. that housing, would be done not under state guidelines, but under town's existing guidelines, where we can work with the developers to provide the community benefits we've been talking about in the 128 Mall Road redevelopment, and open up some of that green space, the nature areas, the connections, the walkability. So I got to give a great debt of gratitude to Liz and her team and all the work that they've done on this. And again, I'm sure we have a variety of opinions in this room right here, and I would just ask everyone to keep an open mind and think about the future. And in my personal opinion, I think we've done a pretty good job here of trying to provide something that does meet the state guidelines, but doesn't open us up to what I think many residents fear is large new housing developments in certain parts of town. And again, we do hope to come to town meeting with the intent on creating housing units where we feel it makes sense down in the commercial area. We have a great example in 3rd Ave. The addition to housing to that commercial district has really been wonders in terms of low vacancy rates. The area is very active morning, noon, and night. There's people walking around. There's a lot of walkability. So that's the type of housing that we think that we really need in town in our commercial areas to keep the commercial areas vibrant. And that's about all I had, and I hope you keep an open mind, and we hope for your support at town meeting in May. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Paul. Next, I want to introduce our consultants for the project from VHB. They've been helping us draft bylaw, look at the compliance model, and help us with really crafting the zoning on this. And then they're going to come up and give part of the presentation. So we have Krista Magaha from VHB, we have Luke Mitchell, and then we also have Frank DePietro. So I think first up is Luke, is that correct? All right.
Thank you, Liz. I'm Luke Mitchell from VHB. We have a series of slides, and we'll try to make quick work of it so we can get into the discussions, which we're really looking forward to. So, as Liz mentioned, we're working for the town to help craft the zoning. And really that's about deciding where the district ends up geographically and what the zoning overlay contains in terms of how it changes the underlying regulatory framework of that district. So we can get into all those details. Krista can get into all those details in a few slides. Here's our timeline. We actually started working in 2023 and had a series of different districts that we discussed with Liz and others in the community before we landed to what Krista will be presenting in a few slides. This is our timeline for this year, for 2024. So in January, the MBTA working group convened for the first time. I can share that, who's in that group with you on the next slide. But they'll be meeting throughout the process to help shepherd this along and move it forward. In early February, we finalized the geographic extents of the district along with the zoning language that would accompany it. The MBTA working group met again on February 12th. And then on February 13th, we submitted what we had come up with for the spring town meeting warrant. At the same time, we filed those materials with the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. That is the newly formed state agency who is responsible for coordinating all of the work in the 175 communities that need to comply with this process. So those materials are with that agency currently under review. They have 90 days to turn around an opinion and let us know. So very much look forward to hearing from the state in terms of how they respond. And then last week there was a meeting with several boards in town to discuss. Tonight is March 13th, speaking with you guys with the community. And then the meetings will continue up until the spring town meeting in May, where the town will vote to support or reject the proposed zoning. Here is the constituency of the MBTA working group. Won't run through all of the names, but just pointing out that the working group includes members of the Planning Board, Land Use Committee, Ways and Means Committee, Zoning Bylaw Review Committee, Select Board, and town meeting members. So it's a great representative group, and we've had a lot of good spirited discussions with that group. As was mentioned earlier, we assume that most of you have some level of familiarity with the MBTA Communities Law, but just to give a high-level overview. The new law, Section 3A of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40A, requires that an MBTA community, of which, again, there are, I think, 175, 176, shall have at least one zoning district of reasonable size in which multifamily housing is permitted as of right at a gross density of 15 units per acre. There's a lot of nuances within each of the sections of that paragraph, but the spirit of the law is essentially that for those communities that have MBTA-owned transit operations in the town, or those that are adjacent to towns that do, zoning should be tweaked and updated to allow multifamily housing by right. Basically, as in, yes, sure.
If I just heard you correctly, it's not just the 175 communities. Did you just say adjacent towns too?
Those 175 include towns with stations and the adjacent communities. Yes.
So really, the MBTA number is lower than 175 or 177.
Community.
That's strictly MBTA.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
what is that number, sir?
What is the number of?
Actual MBTA town cities that actually have their facilities going through.
A great question. I don't have the answer to that right now, but hopefully we can find it before the evening's out, and I can let you know. Yep. And the requirements do differ based on the status of the municipality. It's not the same requirements for every town.
I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
You're welcome.
So, question here is, why is allowing for multifamily zoning important to the state of Massachusetts? This law really came about in response to a lack of housing. In other words, there's a mismatch, a growing mismatch between the supply of housing units and the need for housing. And because of that mismatch, the cost of the average housing unit has continued to increase over the years. Due to the increasing cost of housing, more and more households are putting more and more of their income into housing costs. That includes both owners of houses and renters. So there's a benchmark where if you pay more than 30% of your income on housing, then you're considered to be a cost-burdened household. The share of households that are within that category continues to increase year after year, as the production of housing has been relatively slow, but the need for housing has continued to grow. So due to those conditions, Massachusetts has among the highest and fastest growing home prices and rents of any state in the nation. Really, planners talk a lot about the housing crisis as being a nationwide problem, and it is. It's very pronounced in Massachusetts, where construction costs are higher than they are in most parts of the country, and that has a lot to do with labor shortages and supply side issues. But so housing has gotten very, very expensive in Massachusetts. It's a problem that some people at the state have estimated that in order for the supply to catch up with the demand of housing, something to the effect of 200,000 units of housing would need to be produced, which would help right-size the cost of housing. And really, I mean, that's pretty high-level summary of a very complex issue. But that really explains the impetus behind the state's action at rolling out this legislation, which is that there are several barriers to the production of housing. One of them is how expensive it is to build it. Another one is zoning. So in other words, many municipalities and communities in Massachusetts historically have been somewhat resistant to allowing new multifamily housing to be built. So this is the state's way of trying to compel communities to loosen up some of those barriers and allow for developers to respond to the strong demand for housing and build more multifamily housing. And what they've tried to do is craft it such that the burden, if you want to call it that, is shared among many, many communities rather than concentrated in specific locations. And the MBTA angle is that they want to concentrate that housing in areas that are served by the MBTA, and they have a certain area around stations, which is why neighboring communities are included. So, an estimated housing production shortage in Massachusetts, this is important, lack of housing production and affordability issues can really impede community development and risk future job growth moving from Massachusetts to peer states. And by that I mean there are many people leaving Massachusetts to live elsewhere because the cost of housing is less expensive. We were talking about it earlier. Massachusetts is one of the top states that's losing population to other states because of the cost of housing. And many of those mobile households are people of working age. So between the ages, I think it was 20 and 36 is one of the biggest category of people leaving the state. So that there's negative impacts from that, which is that the population either stays the same or in many communities is contracting. And also in terms of the economy, you have less economically productive people. The economy could potentially suffer from that. So how can Burlington use zoning for multifamily housing as an advantage? Basically, by allowing for multifamily housing, there's the potential to create new housing in walkable neighborhoods closer to retail and amenities. As was mentioned earlier, Burlington has built a lot of multifamily housing, and that's a great thing because every time a new unit gets built, the supply grows, cost comes down incrementally a little bit. So there are also many areas in Burlington that have strong commercial urban environment. So I think it's a great idea to try to co-locate the housing and the commercial areas so that you can have that thriving, walkable communities. It's going to contribute much less to traffic with walkability. Yes?
Okay, so I have a question.
Yes.
It was mentioned by Paul, I think, you just mentioned it. Burlington has built a number of multi-unit properties. I don't say Burlington, I'll say the developers.
That's right.
People that put their money at risk. So my question is, do we get credit if it's 1,500 units and this law, if implemented here in Burlington, would require us to do 1,500 units? It's a wash. We've already met the requirements, but they're not in the so-called district. It's in the town limits.
Yes.
Do we get credit for any of those that have been built in the recent
Yep.
years?
No. The way that the law is written is that it's not requiring that so many units get built. It's requiring that the multi-unit housing capacity of a district includes that amount of housing. So in other words, the state isn't requiring that any units of housing get built. It's simply what's required for compliance is a change to the underlying zoning that would allow for future development to accommodate that number of units.
Let me ask you, and I don't want to get too personal, but how long have you lived in Massachusetts?
how's that relevant to this discussion?
Because a number of people, including myself, they say one thing and they do something else. We've been around too long. We have institutional knowledge. So they're going to say one thing and they do something else, and it's been proven over and over and over again. That's why I'm just wondering if you're aware of that.
Well, yeah, so I've been in Massachusetts for around 10 years, and thank you for the point of view, but that's the legislation and that's how it's written, and really, we can get into some more details as we go on, but understood. Thank you for the comment.
So
Yep.
you realize that, we're not rookies. We've been down this road before.
Understood.
And, there's people that have different opinions, but
Yep.
I think you're going to find there's a lot of people that don't agree with what's going on.
Okay. Thanks for those comments. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to you, Krista, to speak a little bit more about some of those specifics that you've brought up, actually. Yes.
Wasn't there an agenda that was posted online, or am I mistaken? I thought I saw an agenda for this meeting.
So this is a public meeting, there was an agenda posted, but I said the agenda when I just.
Well, I'd like to show it to you because it's different than what you said.
I'm sorry,
Yeah, it's much different.
what was posted on there?
Yeah, let me pull it up.
So there's a planning board, can we talk about this after?
Well, you can answer my question.
You were waiting and that whole week, everybody waiting. This is. No, this is not this meeting. No.
So,
I'm gonna ask that, from now on, I'm gonna ask the questions, we hold your questions until the end, so that we can, get through the presentation, and then you guys are all gonna have lots of time to speak, and we wanna hear from you. So at this point, I'm gonna ask no more questions, so we can get through this, and then get on to the good part.
yeah, and Chris is going to walk through some of the details of legislation that I hope will answer some of the questions you've already asked.
All right, good evening. My name is Krista Magaha. I am an urban planner at VHB, and we have been working with the town since last June on formulating a district that meets this MBTA Communities law. So this map here actually might answer a question that was earlier in the presentation. The MBTA communities are categorized into different categories. So there's rapid transit communities, there's commuter rail communities, which have commuter rail stations, and then there are adjacent communities, which is Burlington's designation. Burlington is classified by the state as an MBTA adjacent community.
No, you just need to speak up.
Okay. So being classified as an adjacent community, this means that Burlington is required to create a multifamily district of at least 50 acres. And in those 50 acres, multifamily has to be permitted as of right, with a gross density of 15 dwelling units per acre. This is not a law that requires anything to be built. This is a law that affects the zoning and the permitting process for new multifamily housing. This is just to show some comparable adjacent communities. Burlington has similar requirements to Saugus, similar requirements to Westford. The required multifamily unit capacity to be shown within the 50 acres in Burlington is 1,043. So the district that we have been working on to create needs to, in the compliance model provided by the state, needs to show that it could calculate out the potential for 1,043 units within that 50 acres. So a little bit about the zoning overlay district that has been decided on, has been discussed by the MBTA working group. Just a little bit of information about it. we went through a long process of looking at different districts before we got to this point. The district is divided into two sub-districts. So there is the garden apartment sub-district and there is the mixed-use sub-district. The garden apartment sub-district has requirements for a 3-story maximum building height and 20 maximum dwelling units per acre. These are located in residential areas already, so it's very much fitting with what is existing on the ground in those areas. Putting this zoning over those existing residential areas does not impact those areas. It's just allowing multifamily by right if one day new development were to come in that area, but it's not requiring anything to happen. The mixed-use sub-district is a little bit different. This is located closer to Middlesex Turnpike, so this encompasses existing multifamily as well as existing commercial area, and the mixed-use sub-district is different from the garden apartment sub-district. Initially, permitting as of right, it has that same 20 max dwelling units per acre and 3-story limitation, but it does allow for a density bonus where if the development proposed is mixed use and has a certain percentage of commercial ground floor retail, then they would be allowed potentially up to 30 dwelling units per acre and 4 stories. So a little incentive to have mixed uses in the Mall Road area. And what I'm going to go through next is a breakdown of each of the different areas included in the proposed zoning overlay, just to show you exactly what's going to be covered in this rezoning, and we can go through each area one by one. And then we have a little bit more after that, but that's what I'm going to take you through right now. So here is the proposed district. 1 and 2 in yellow on the map are the garden apartment sub-district. So that includes the Beacon Village apartments. That area is actually 38.85 acres, so it includes more than Beacon Village. It includes areas to the east, so the condos and other apartments, and we'll get to that in the next slide, as well as Heritage at Stone Ridge is included in this garden apartment sub-district. The mixed-use sub-district is the Middlesex Turnpike area, so that includes the Lifetime Living, the Huntington and the Tremont, and importantly, the Staples area, which we will get to. So in total, the district is 67.61 total acres. That does meet the required 50-acre minimum. So here we have Area 1. Again, this is the garden apartment sub-district. It exists 4 separate parcels. The base zoning of this is a mix of one-family dwelling and garden apartment. Putting the MBTA zoning overlay over this will not change very much requirements to what is existing. It's very, very similar to the garden apartment zoning requirements. Included are the Beacon Village apartments, the Dover and Georgia Drive condos. There's about 26 units there, and then the Westgate Garden apartments right on the Woburn town line. We also have Heritage at Stone Ridge. Importantly, for this parcel, it includes the existing apartments, but it does exclude this area on the top of the parcel because that is age restricted, which does not fit within the MBTA Communities requirements because it would not be permitting multifamily as of right if there are any age restrictions. So we are just using the bottom half of the bottom portion of the parcel, the 5.7 acres there. And the base zoning of this is a planned development. So getting into the mixed-use sub-district, the first area is lifetime living. So these are the existing apartments. As you can see, there's still construction on the aerial, so they are fairly new. This is 5.3 acres, and the current zoning is a planned development. And then we have the Huntington and the Tremont as well. And these are higher densities. They're about 32 dwelling units per acre and 51. So what we are allowing by right over this is less than what's existing. So they would, to do anything higher than that, they would need to go through the special plan development process. And the Staples area is definitely the area with the potential to actually be turned into and result in multifamily from this rezoning. This area consists of 5 buildings. It includes the Staples building, that's number 5, and many 4 different older office buildings. As we know, the office market is not as it has been in the past. And so this area definitely is walkable to the mall, it's walkable to all of these other new apartments, and it's a really, really good opportunity to have mixed use. So the potential for walkable ground floor retail with housing above it. And that's why we have introduced the density bonus into this area. So to promote having retail and apartment living together, so people can live near where they work, near where they shop, and their entertainment and restaurants and all of that. So that was a wrap of all of the different areas included in the zoning overlay district that is proposed for the rezoning at town meeting. We do have a few other slides just looking at different housing types. So this slide here shows the term multifamily doesn't just mean large 5-story apartments. There's a lot of middle housing and a lot of different types of buildings that are included and that are possible under allowing multifamily zoning. So it really can fit the area and fit the situation. And it's not necessarily just allowing giant apartment buildings. So just a little bit of context on the variety of different housing types that are allowable under just the term multifamily housing. And here we have some examples of, in Massachusetts, multifamily housing as well as mixed use. So Coldbrook Crossing in Sudbury, Massachusetts is an example of a development that is 20 dwelling units per acre. So what we are allowing by right with this zoning overlay would be something like Coldbrook Crossing, keeping in mind that is a over 20 acre development, which is why the dwelling units per acre seems lower than if it were on a smaller property. 30 Haven Street in Reading, Massachusetts is a great example of ground floor walkable retail with apartments above. That makes for an exciting streetscape and an inviting place where people want to walk around, and it's just a good example of walkable mixed use. That is what we are intending to promote with the Staples commercial area being part of this rezoning. And another example is Mayflower Manor, and that's an example of a property that's 29 dwelling units per acre, so just a little closer to 30, which is what would be allowable with the density bonus in the mixed-use subdistrict. All right, and I think we have Frank, or? Frank? No.
I think there's a first and my second.
We changed the schedule, now
It's all right, you can do it, Frank. We'll continue.
Thank you all. They put me in this position so that if I mess something up, it's at the end and it wouldn't have a major impact on the entire project. So I'm here to talk about what the benefits of complying with the MBTA Communities legislation. And really that gets down, besides affordable homes, or homes in the town, and if you sat through, some of you were involved in the master plan, the 70-plus meetings, and one of the two big items were housing for seniors and housing for folks, younger people who wanted to move back into the town that they grew up in. I grew up in Burlington 150 years ago. I'm back now. It's another one of my jokes I'll cross off for the future. Anyways, so that was something that in fact was a goal of the master plan that Burlington put together and has been implemented. So under the MBTA communities, one of the benefits of compliance is getting money from the state. Specifically, there's the MassWorks program, there's a housing choice program, and there's also local capital improvements. And Burlington has significantly benefited from that program. And just MassWorks alone, from 2011 to 2023, Massachusetts got about $13.75 million from the state. From about 2019 to 2023, over that 4-year period, between that and other groups, we ended up getting about $4.5 million in funding to the state. It's well over $1 million, and we were not able to figure every single benefit that the town gets from that funding. So there's money involved in there. In the presentation, we've got some listings of what the specifics were. We got that through Ken Gordon's office, so the information is very valid. One item that is in there is what we're doing currently. So I think Melissa and other people can talk about this. Burlington just got a grant to do some preliminary design of a bicycle connection from the end of the Minutemen. There's an extension of the Minutemen Bikeway on Adams Street. That would be going through the Burlington area. Matter of fact, it might be beneficial to that. We're looking to get grants on other items. You remember about a year or so ago, the folks from Northeastern, some graduate students, had a program that wanted to get not only that bike path, but also a river walk through the Great Meadow area. That is something I think the town's trying to pursue. Those are the kind of things that, in fact, would be very beneficial to the towns that goes on. There are a number, I think Liz will talk about these, of other initiatives that the town's going after. So if, in fact, to go on the non-benefit part, if, in fact, the community does not comply with the MBTA communities, the state will limit its funding of a number of the programs, MassWorks grants, others that the town has benefited by. If you think of a really good example of that, if you look at the Northwest Park project, that was undertaken initially with private capital, but all the improvements on Middlesex Turnpike, the signalization of even 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Avenue, some of the other widenings and turnings, that all came from MassWorks grants in the amount to something like about $4.5 million to get that material, that improvements done. And again, sort of going back to maybe what Paul Sagarino talked about, if we're looking at how do you get the big design thing where you've got a walkable, livable, interactive community. If you look at Northwest Park, you have between the Tremont and the Huntington, I think it's 297 units. There's another 167 at the Lifetime Living. That area is certainly walkable, certainly have the restaurants, certainly have the entertainment. So Burlington already has a really good example of what these type of communities would be looking like, and it's something to keep in mind. It could be done very well. I think I've overstepped my bounds of my time, so I'm going to leave, and I will pass it over to Liz.
Thank you, guys. Thanks so much. A couple of things I wanted to kind of address. So one of the concerns we hear a lot about, can you hear me, John? I'll talk louder. One of the concerns we hear about from different people, it's been kind of, ever since this concept was brought up, or this law was brought up, is, getting credit. And so in this plan, I'd like to think that we are doing a little bit of both. So this town, I would say, from coming here and working here, this town has been extremely progressive and ahead of the game when it comes to housing. When it comes to permitting, multifamily housing, you're above your 40B, we're at 13%. Town meeting has been wonderful at doing that. And so by putting this overlay district to get to comply with the law over existing housing units, multifamily housing, we are getting credit for that. So that was kind of the give. The take is that there is one area we want to feel like we are doing kind of what is the spirit of the law. And we also want to make sure that the state accepts our application. So that's why we have added the Staples area, Staples North, to the overlay district to allow for potential redevelopment there. We chose these sites, the existing multifamily sites, because we wanted to make sure that we picked sites that weren't imminently going to need redevelopment. So that these could be redeveloped in 20, 30 years, but they're still, they're still making good rents, and so they're really not in danger of kind of turning over and redeveloping. The Staples site, we picked that because those buildings really aren't the highest and best use for those sites, and we can look at them. I'll find them. They're older. If you drive by them, you'll see that many of them have for lease signs out there. One of the things we're also just big picture planning, things we're thinking about, Paul Sagarino and the administration, is that, as we have a huge amount of office in town, these are office buildings, the office market, everybody's working from home now. We are concerned that more and more property, as people don't continue their leases in the office buildings, we are concerned that they could be asking for tax abatements from town. So we're doing our best to plan for that. Myself and Melissa with her plan for the mixed use district to kind of hedge that so that we can have, add some more housing, mixed use, and kind of bring it to the next level, bring it into the next century, bring it into, 2024 and beyond. So with that, I'm gonna go get back on the train, Liz. Okay. So just kind of talking about our grants, and Frank did an amazing job of talking about that. So just thinking about the future and what we would be looking to do, the planning department, for grant funding that we would be looking for in the pretty near future. We've already applied for the Mass Trails grant to connect to the Minuteman Bikeway. So that, for recreational purposes, commuting purposes, people biking up from Cambridge and Somerville, working at Northwest Park. We need to update our wireless bylaw. I want to look at the town center overlay, and we need money for consultants to do that. And so these are just some of the things that, if for whatever reason, if the town does not, approve this plan and we are not in compliance, these are things that, I wouldn't be able to necessarily do for you, and I wouldn't be able to kind of serve the constituents the way I really want to. The other things that I've reached out to our DPW. They also are huge benefits. They get a ton of money from these grants. Rachel Leonardo, she's our business, what is her official title? Business coordinator, and she gets all of these grants. So we are connected to MWRA. We did get millions and millions for that project to get clean, safe drinking water into the town. And there's one final phase that she is going to apply for more money for. That is on the chopping block. PFAS water treatment, she's looking for more money to kind of finalize that. I think we need to keep up to date with our filters on that. Mass DEP grant, and then energy upgrades. So, you know, when I think about this, this overlay zone and this law, I think about kind of the money side of it. I also think about, you know, non-compliance. We know from Milton what happens. They have lost access to grants. They've also, the state attorney general has taken them to court, essentially. And so, you know, I'm bringing this plan to you because I really think it's a middle ground. And I think that, you know, I believe, this is just my opinion, that I think our taxpayer dollars could be better spent than on, you know, lawsuit with the state. We have more to lose than we have more to gain than, you know. So, you know, if it were my tax dollars, I would want this. I wouldn't want to, you know, have a frivolous lawsuit that may take years and years and years to end, and we don't know where it will end. So my suggestion is to leave that up to other communities who haven't built as much housing, who aren't in we aren't in a bind. We have options. So that's kind of my pitch. The other thing to think about in terms of finances for the town and being able to receive these grants is we have huge capital facilities improvements that need to come about in the next few years. We absolutely need a new police department. We need a new Fox Hill that's ongoing. The school department's looking at the high school, Pine Glen school replacement, so there's a lot of capital projects that are coming up. So this is just a small piece of that, obviously, but it's still a piece that I think matters. And so, you know, not having to go to the Well of Town meeting for funding to do all these projects that we want to do is important. So I just want to give you some insight into, you know, what happens behind the scenes at Town Hall when we think about these things. And so with that, did I get through all my notes? I hope so. We've been talking a long time, and I think we need to get into breakout groups. Okay, so with that, I think we finally are done. So if you want to look at our story map, so a story map is an online mapping tool that kind of gives you the highlights of kind of what we've talked about, and you can learn more a little bit about it. You can go to that. We also have our MBTA Communities page. You can take a picture with your phone. I've put out the QR code. You can take a picture with your phone and learn more about it there. And I think that's it. I think we are going to next break out into discussion groups, like 2 of them. 2 discussion groups, and we have a few questions we want to ask of you. And so for your feedback on the plan that we have that we are presenting regarding this project, or regarding this law, and kind of, you know, what's your take? What are your concerns? You know, we want to hear from you, so we have questions. So we will be kind of half and half. We'll do one half this side, one half that side. And with that, I'll be done, I think, for now. But thank you so much for coming, you guys. I appreciate it.